Welcome to a special edition of Gospel Truth with Andrew Wommack, a teaching ministry that focuses on God's unconditional love and grace. This week, Andrew is joined by guest speakers Richard Harris and David and Tim Barton as they discuss the upcoming elections and America's hope for the future. And now, here's Andrew.
Welcome to our Friday's broadcast of the Gospel Truth. Again, this week we've been having special programs talking about the upcoming elections, Christians getting involved, and we've had David and Tim Barton with us, and boy, they are just such a blessing. Appreciate you guys so much and everything you're doing, not only with us, but man, they just travel constantly. They are being used by the Lord big time to make a difference in this nation. And then we've got also Richard Harris with us. He's the director of our Truth and Liberty Coalition. And we've been talking about Christians getting involved. We've talked about a lot of things. I can't go back and rehearse all of it, but everything's archived so you can visit it on our website. And I encourage you to please watch these programs and get involved and make a difference. But today, the last day of this week, we kind of want to talk about maybe some of the good things that are happening. And yesterday we talked a lot about Trump, and his personality is not for everybody, but his policies have been probably some of the most godly policies of any president in my lifetime. So we tried to put policies over personality, but there have been some great things happen in the last few years. And I think, Richard, you were talking about the Lemon Law, and most people don't know what that is. Why don't you explain a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, was a case called Lemon versus Kurtzman, decided in 1971 or 73 by the U.S. Supreme Court that set up this test on whether something is going to be constitutional, religious expression. And under that case, Christmas displays, prayer, 10 Commandments on the wall, graduation prayers, all kinds of things that we as Americans have done for 250 years have been struck down as unconstitutional. Well,
why? Because it had a religious element?
Yeah, because of this crazy idea of separation of church and state that isn't in the Constitution. But there was a...
well, Richard, can I add to that real quick too?
Sure.
Because this came on the heels of, in 1962 and 63, when the U.S. Supreme Court said we couldn't have prayer in schools, couldn't have the Bible in schools anymore. And it raised the question, well,
by the way, that was raw judicial activism because the court itself said there was no precedent, either historical or legal, for taking prayer and Bible out. So the court acknowledged this is brand new turf. We've never been here. We've never done this, but this is the way we progressives want to do it now for all of you.
Well, I'm the only one that didn't interrupt the other one, so let's go back to Richard.
Well, so Lemon had a three-part test to it. You have to have strict neutrality, no entanglement, and no substantial advancement of religion. And under that, they struck down all these things, and we've been having less and less freedom in America for religion ever since then. But in a case 2 years ago, the Supreme Court, it was Coach Joe Kennedy's case out of Bremerton High School in the state of Washington, where he was praying voluntarily on the 50-yard line, and they ended up firing him because he wouldn't quit. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said Lemon is not constitutional. We overruled that decision, and from this point forward, we're going to be looking at whether government activity in the area of religion, if it's constitutional, we're going to be looking at historical precedent and the original intent of the founders in the Constitution. And so the door has been flung wide open. Tim, you can talk about this, but I believe that we have rolled the clock back 100 years. We have more religious freedom now under that precedent than we have had in 100 years in America. And it's just beginning to percolate down through the lower courts. But we've got Oklahoma, for example, says we're going to put the Bible back in schools. I just went to a bill signing in Oklahoma where Governor Stitt signed a bill saying every school district in the state, you must adopt a policy to facilitate off-campus religious instruction for public school students, which has been constitutional since 1950. Louisiana said we're going to post the 10 Commandments in every school classroom again. Texas has school chaplains now authorized and funded by the state in every school in America, and I think that really great things are ahead.
And before we explain that, remember, this did not happen without the judges that Trump put on the court.
That's right.
This is the result.
Your vote matters.
If he had not been president, we would not be talking this right now. And he has shown us what kind of judges he will give us. And he's already made the point that he thinks he can be more conservative than what he was last time because he has better counselors now on judges.
Well, and Dave, Joe Biden just a couple of weeks ago and Kamala Harris, they've announced this aggressive plan to reshape the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
They want to add more justices. They want to impose some crazy rules, and it's because of this new freedom they want to call that back, and they don't like where we're headed as a country.
I heard it was 18 years they want to put a term limit because 3 conservative justices would immediately be eliminated.
Yeah.
Now, ironically, they don't want to have that for Nancy Pelosi, right? Joe Biden, who's been there 50 years in government office, but whatever's politically expedient for them in that moment. But the limit decision is huge because backing up and looking big picture at this, right? When the court did this, they were trying to answer the question where people said, now, if we can't pray in schools, if we can't have the Bible in schools, then what are we allowed to do? And so they say, well, let's come up with a test to see. And essentially their test said that you can only do religious things in public, in government settings, in schools, if you can prove it's not for religious reasons. And so because of that, they said, well, you can't use nativity scenes because you're only doing that for religious reasons. You can't have school chaplains, or they go through this incredible list. Well, over the next 50 years, more than 7,000 times, courts cited the Lemon Test to strike down religious activity in government institutions or in schools specifically. Right. And the first, actually, the chink in the armor for the Lemon Test came in 2019. It was a case, the Bladensburg Cross decision. There's a World War I memorial cross that was up in Maryland. And at the end of World War I, there was a group of moms that came together and they wanted to honor their sons who had died in the war. They raised the money and they erected this massive cross. And there was an atheist that came by and was offended by it and said, that's clearly religious. It's on government property. You can't have a religious cross on government property. The case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court recognized the only reason that people were saying we couldn't have this cross was because of the Lemon decision. Well, that's crazy. It's a World War I memorial cross. And they said, maybe we need to come up with a new test. And they suggested that maybe instead of considering, right, is it done for religious reasons? Maybe we should consider and say, is there long-standing historic tradition? And if there is, then maybe there should be a presumption of constitutionality. Meaning if we've always done this in America, maybe we should think it's okay. Well, then go forward. Before you had the Coach Kennedy decision in 2022, you also had the decision from the city of Boston. There were 3 flagpoles that flew in front of the city of Boston. One of them flew the American flag, one flew the city flag, and then the third flagpole would fly whatever flag citizens could come and they could petition to get a flag flown in their honor, celebration, whatever it was. The city had flown more than 200 flags and had never said no until one group came and they said, we want to fly the Christian flag. Yep. And the city said, oh, no, that because separation church and state, so many things. But a judge upheld the decision saying, oh, yeah, they can choose not to do that because clearly that's for religious reasons, so it violates the Lemon Test. Well, this goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, and this is the second chink in the armor, because this is before Coach Kennedy. It's the second chink in the armor of Lemon where they say that that's clearly religious a discrimination against these individuals who have a religious viewpoint. And I think it was Justice Breyer,
It was Justice Breyer. Justice Breyer, I think, is the most secular justice we've ever had in Supreme Court history. And he came down and he said, hey, this would have been unconstitutional in a Lemon Test, but the Lemon Test was done at a time when the court took a much more freewheeling approach to the constitutional interpretation. So Breyer saying that was a bunch of liberals. It was a 9-0 unanimous decision. All the liberals joined, all the conservatives said you got to fly the Christian flag.
So that was twice. The U.S. Supreme Court cited and said Lemon was wrong in this, and that's to build up to Coach Kennedy. And the Coach Kennedy decision took 7 years to get there. He lost every single appeal, and every lower court said, well, Lemon says he can't, so clearly he can't. And this is when the U.S. Supreme Court, not only did they reinstate him and say that the school was wrong and he gets back pay, but they said that the Lemon decision is why this was used, and that was a crazy thing. You want to speak to this?
No, you're good. I'm just saying, Lemon was criticized ever since it was decided. There were legal scholars all over the place saying this is unworkable. It's not rooted in the Constitution or in history and all of that. You know, at Truth and Liberty, we had our awards banquet last year, Andrew. We were so blessed to be able to give Coach Kennedy the Samuel Whitmore Award at that event. And what an inspiring, you know, he's a Marine Corps veteran. And anyway, it was awesome. But I think this all goes back to
Riley Gaines spoke at that.
Yeah, and Riley Gaines.
Really,
but it all goes back to what we're talking about here, which is our vote matters, because none of this, Tim, like you said, would have happened if Donald Trump had not been president and appointed those conservative justices who look at the Constitution as it is written and according to original intent.
It is huge, and I want to do a quick commercial here, because with Lemon gone, what you've got now is all the stuff that we haven't been able to do with 7,300 cases you can now do. So right now there are 1,200 school districts in America with 200,000 kids with the Bible as the only textbook in their course. It's a Bible course, and it's just the Bible course, and that's public schools. You can go back to having prayer at schools. Student prayer is completely legal now. You can have prayer at graduations. You can have you can do creation science stuff now. It doesn't have to be evolutionary. But that only works if parents will get their kids, and the kids will do that. It's got to be done locally. So Trump has opened the door for the nation to change itself if they want to. And so let's go to Trump's judges, but we got to make the decisions.
The law firm that had all three cases was First Liberty out of Dallas, and they have a website called Restoring Faith in America.
RFIA.
Where they want people to know what can now be done to continue to advance religious liberty, because as you mentioned, there's more opportunity for religious liberty now than in any of our lifetimes.
That's right.
I mean, really, like maybe since back in like the founding father era almost. It's incredible, and it couldn't have happened without Trump. And this is not just a blanket plug for Trump, because when Trump was first running in 2015, 2016, I mean, there was some stuff coming out about him and you know, some recordings,
just
and you're like,
a couple of weeks before the election,
right? And you're like, this guy's got some issues. Well, the reality is that the things that people are saying now, Trump is the same Samson kind of character, but if you look at what now God was able to use Trump to do something that now has changed the fabric of America in some of the most incredible directions, where we have in Louisiana the 10 Commandments and Oklahoma schools, and we work with state legislators in all 50 states, and we see things that are being filed for this upcoming year's cycles in the states that are doing it. And I'm talking about the nation is about to be fundamentally different. Now, that will be different
in a positive way.
Correct. We're restoring some of these things that have been lost, where we're now having so many things, protecting women's sports and protecting life and
parental rights.
Restoring parental rights and school choice in areas. All of this, again, to say, Trump was known to be a Samson kind of figure when he was running the first time. And he's no less of a Samson kind of person, but God used Samson, and God brought victories through Samson in incredible ways. And we're only kind of scratching the top of the surface of some of the things that we're seeing God do in America, that you can look back and when, for example, Roe versus Wade, which we haven't even really gotten into yet. When Roe was first decided back in 1973, there were people that in that moment dedicated their entire lives that they're going to now fight to try to end what this U.S. Supreme Court unconstitutionally said is this a fundamental right to abortion. Right. They said, no, that's crazy. They spent their entire life fighting for something. Many of them died and never saw it realized. They would be rejoicing right now, look at what God has done in this. And again, we can point out the fact that this came from a president, very imperfect president, but who appointed the right kind of judges who actually read the Constitution and said, here's what the Constitution actually says.
We've got 24 states, or I think is the count, that have major restrictions on abortion now. Some of them heartbeat bills, something close like that. Right. And one number I saw out of Charlotte Lozier Institute was 300,000 babies' lives have been saved. And that's just in the last 2 years.
And that's the result of the last presidential election.
Right.
Well, actually 2 ago, but Trump, and this is why it matters.
Yes.
I mean, this is why it really matters.
So if you're a Christian and you go into the polling booth and you say, well, I don't like this candidate, this one is nicer, and you vote that way, then honestly and truly, you don't care about the issues that matter, and you're being foolish. Now, I'm not telling you how to vote, but you got to vote according to policy and biblical values, not according to personality.
Let me also say that we are in a war. I believe that this is every bit as big a war as a revolution or the Civil War, and in some ways it's worse because it's subtle. People don't realize we're in a war, but we are fighting for the foundation of this nation.
Yeah.
And who else would take a bullet to their ear and stand up and go fight?
Right.
There is not anybody else that I can think of that would handle all of the stuff that's happened to President Trump.
And one thing we know for sure is we know what President Trump will do because of what he did.
Yeah.
We think we know what Walsh would do because he was governor, and what Harris would do because she was AG and she was a senator. So we got records on all of them. But I'll point out that in addition to all the things that we're concerned about as Christians and things like life and religious liberty, there's also other things I think are really fundamentally important, like borders. I mean, we did have a closed border,
absolutely.
and now we got so many terrorists, and we can't count them all. And I mean, we see the weekly reports, because in Texas, we get those weekly reports of how many came across that are on the terrorist watch list, and they still come in. We've got that. We've got the fact that our government is way too big, and Trump instituted a policy that you cannot issue another regulatory policy without repealing two. Well, that's really good. That's awesome. Decreasing governor. Nobody hears about that. Nobody talks about that. What he did with the military actually became a military again instead of a social program. And so what was happening? There were so many. We had, I think, 1,500 different folks went into the military simply so they could get transgender surgery, because it's about a $150,000 process, and they completely crippled their units. Our kid, we've got a kid in the military, and there were 14 in a unit, and if you lost one of the 14, the whole unit was out of function because they all had very specific jobs. And so you've now got all these units that can't work because people went in to get surgeries paid for, or they're going in to get free education because we don't have the military we used to have, and that's why we're seeing military people today saying, hey, don't join the military.
Yeah, they're not meeting their recruitment goals.
That's right. They're not meeting the recruitment. See, Trump had all of that different. And so for people, when you start hearing all the $1 billion that's going to be spent in campaign ads to talk about how wild and radical it is, just go back and look at what it produced the first time.
And we're already seeing Google and some of these major search engines changing algorithms where they're favoring a particular candidate and bring it. If you want to search something on Donald Trump, you're going to find pages and pages of negatives. If you look for something negative on Kamala Harris, you're going to have a hard time finding it.
Yeah.
We're already seeing social media, we're seeing big tech involve themselves in this. And Andrew, as you pointed out, we are in a war, in spiritual war. I think a lot of people, interestingly enough, the opening ceremony of the Olympics, I think, was an awakening for many people to recognize just how much of a spiritual war we are in. Mm-hmm. But I think part of the spiritual war also in America is a spiritual war of discouragement and complacency. Because if Christians become discouraged, if they become complacent, then the devil wins if we don't fight. But if Christians show up, we ultimately know where the true victory comes from. We know that we're looking for something that's eternal. But we also know in Ephesians 5, the Apostle Paul challenged the church in Ephesus, be careful how you walk, not as fools but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. And Richard, to your point, when you're talking about sometimes we have a disconnect in maybe our strategic thinking of how we should vote or why we should vote, because if we don't get what we want, then we get frustrated. And I don't want to do this anymore. That's not a very wise or strategic thought. And ultimately, I'm so grateful. God gave us the freedom to choose. You have the freedom to choose, but in your freedom to choose, understand that there is a strategic decision and there's a pretty foolish decision. And that's where Paul says, be careful you walk not as fools, but as wise. And I think as Christians, we need to recognize there's a spiritual war going on. And if people are battling with a discouragement, well, God doesn't give the spirit of discouragement, right? That is not from God. God doesn't give the spirit of complacency. That's not from God. There is a spiritual war that is raging, and it's raging over the soul, the heart, the direction of America, also because America has been the beacon, the city on the hill for centuries. We have been the top funder of gospel ministry, the top printer of Bibles. I mean, you can go down the list. God has used America in amazing ways. And I don't think God's done with America. The reason in 2021 we talked about a Great Awakening, we think we're in a third Great Awakening in America again. God's not done with America. But if Christians don't recognize we're in a spiritual battle, and if we don't show up, if we won't be strategic and get involved, there's no guarantee we win in this moment. Now, we win in the end, but if we don't engage the spiritual battle, if we don't engage in faith and become active participants, then this nation could go the direction that historically no nations lasted forever. No superpowers lasted forever. And most of them, they last around 250 years is the average length cycle. We're a year and a half away, 2 years away.
And I would add too that what you're talking about, discouragement, because people are discouraged, and we're hearing it. People, there's a lot of criticisms, and it's easier to criticize than to see the positive thing. But there's a great example in the Bible with David. When David was out doing the king's work and was fighting the enemy and was winning the enemy, and he came back to his town of Ziklag, and the enemy came in and had stolen everything that was there, stolen his family, stolen his children, stolen all the guy's stuff, and they all turned on David. And they wanted to put David down, and there was nobody encouraging him. And 1 Samuel 30, verse 6 says, and David encouraged himself.
Amen.
And because he encouraged himself, he got them together. He says, okay, guys, let's go kick tail somewhere. And they went and got the enemy. And sometimes you just got to encourage yourself, because there's not much encouragement on the news or in the media or wherever. If you got a circle full of discouragement, get a different circle. Find something else, but encourage yourself.
And we've got a lot of product we're offering this week. This is a TV week's worth of broadcasts that David and Tim and I did back in 2021 talking about the Great Awakening. That's now 3 years ago, and we were speaking some of these things during a very discouraging time right after Trump had been defeated and Biden was the resident, not the president. That's my opinion. And then we have this Hope for the Future, which is a new movie documentary that Richard's team put together, and this is based on 3 prophetic words that God gave me, that we are in a great awakening. We've got this little book that goes along with that. We got biblical worldview and just a lot of stuff. And also, you've got a great website, wallbuilders.com. What's available?
We have all kinds of resources if people want to learn more about the Christian heritage of the nation. In fact, even about the First and Second Great Awakening, recognizing how there would not have been an American Revolution had it not been for pastors. There would not have been an end to slavery had it not been for Christians and pastors involved. And we recognize there won't be a future of America if it's not for Christians and pastors involved. And people want to see that. Wallbuilders.com, incredible resources, lots of great writings, books, documents, original sources. Go back to the founders' writings, but wallbuilders.com is the best place to go.
And the First and Second Great Awakening, really important. We covered that in a book called The American Story, The Beginnings. And we talked yesterday about John Quincy Adams, a phenomenal story. That's covered in The American Story, Building the Republic. So those kind of stories, that's the kind of content information we'll have.
You got one of the greatest resources of any website in the nation. It's really, really awesome. So I encourage you to please take advantage of that. And we also have a series on biblical worldview. This is just the first one. This one is me teaching on just foundational things like, is the Bible the Word of God? What is a biblical worldview? But then we've got subsequent volumes also available on racism, sexuality, socialism, communism, things like that. And we have David Barton, a lot of different speakers that are on there. So this is really, really good. So listen to our announcer as he gives you all this information about how to get these products. And please call or write today.
Explore the new Truth and Liberty website. Empower yourself with Christian liberties and biblical truths. Now with helpful features like the Pastor's Toolkit, video archives, and better search capabilities. Unlock access to an extensive database featuring hundreds of organizations, including the Family Research Council, Wall Builders, Andrew Wommack Ministries, and more. Visit our new website today at truthandliberty.net.
I want to encourage you to listen in to our Truth and Liberty broadcast. We do this every Wednesday and Friday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. And this is not only teaching from the Word of God, that's the truth part of it. God's Word is truth, but also we're talking about current events, and we're going to be dealing with things that affect us, and I believe we'll be dealing with it from a biblical perspective. It'll be a real blessing to you. So check it out every Wednesday and Friday, our Truth and Liberty program, 4 p.m. Mountain Time.
Andrew is offering his booklet, The Great Awakening, as his free gift to you today. This offer is limited to one free booklet per household and is available in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Contact us today to receive your free booklet. This week's panel discussion with Richard Harris and David and Tim Barton is available as part of the God and Country series as a newly updated CD album, TV DVD album, or as a USB made from our daily television broadcast. Also available is the Great Awakening series as a CD album, TV DVD album, and as a USB. Each of these valuable resources are available for a gift of any amount when you contact us. Also, on today's program, Andrew mentioned Biblical Worldview, Foundational Truths. This product is available for $149. The Hope for the Future USB is a powerful film that delivers a message of hope and encouragement, reminding us of God's presence and His divine plan for America. This product is available for Truth and Liberty members or for a one-time donation of $50 or more. If you're not already a Truth and Liberty member, we invite you to become one today by visiting truthandliberty.net. Go to our website at awmc.ca to see all the ways you can get these products. Or you can call the Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada helpline Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time at 647-348-2220 to order.
Harris is taking it to the next level in Canada. We are raising up leaders in the body of Christ by equipping students to stand on the Word and walk in their calling.
I love Charis because it prioritizes the Word, and that's what changes you.
We stand on the Word.
Charis is a life changer.
I have grown so much in the area that I know that God has called me to.
If you would like to be a part of this, go to our website at charisbiblecollege.ca to find out more.
I'd like to let all of you, our Canadian viewers, know that we have a Bible college in Toronto, and we would love to have you come and be a part of it. There's multiple ways you can take advantage, not only through the campus there in Toronto, but we have online courses, we have correspondence courses, just a number of ways, but we want to help you, and we're making it as available to you as we possibly can. So check it out. The information's on your screen, our Charis Bible College, Toronto.
If Andrew's teachings are making a difference in your life, consider becoming a grace partner with Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada today. Go to awmc.ca or call our helpline Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time at 647-348-2220. Also, to learn more about the vision and mission of Andrew Wommack Ministries Canada, be sure to visit our website at awmc.ca. While there, you'll also find details about all of the products available and be able to access many of Andrew's teachings absolutely free. You can listen to them while you're online or download them for later and listen on the go. Remember, that's awmc.ca. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to hearing from you today.